In October of last year, Steins Gate celebrated its 15th anniversary, and to everyone's surprise, they announced a new installment that has nothing to do with that other Steins name subject to change project that they got going on. A new reboot for the franchise titled Steins Gate Reboot. You know, a creative name if there ever was one. And what they showed us was that there was going to be new art and character designs made by Hugh, the original artist, and that they were going to be adding in new story elements to the entire story. All this tied up with a cherry on top being a teaser trailer. And ever since then, it's been practically radio silent. We know nothing else about what's going to be coming out from this game, aside from the fact that the release date is expected to be later this October in 2025. So I think I want to throw my hat into the ring and my guesses on what I think it could potentially be that we would be seeing with this new entry. I mean, I've been such a fan of this franchise for so long and so many years that I think I can make a pretty general guess on what to expect. The science adventure franchise that we've got going on over here is probably going to change a little bit with this installment. At least that's my guess. I mean, they have to do something a little bit more than just giving this the Steins Gate Elite treatment. I mean, are we so negative to just assume that this is gonna be just another cash grab? I mean, does Steins Gate really need something like that? Okay, enough. I know, things like that have happened before. But still, this might be something completely different. So, let's start off. I'm Randy, and let's jump in. For starters, let's focus on the things that we do know about this new entry. We know that there's gonna be brand new art done just for this reboot, meaning that it's not gonna look the exact same as its 2009 counterpart, and I get that. The original designs are so nostalgic and iconic at this point that it's kind of hard to think about how they're gonna be changing them, but I mean, just looking at the artwork that we got in the teaser, it looks pretty dang similar. The only real changes I can see are with Okabe, Suzuha, and Mayuri. But when we get to someone like Daru, we see that he is a carbon copy of 2009. That man has not changed, and I mean, can you blame him? When you reach peak male physique, there's no going back. But everyone, Feris, Moeka, Kurisu, they all look pretty dang similar. But the only differences that I can imagine that these new sprites might have compared to the originals are maybe they're gonna be used to implement new kinds of like live 2D aesthetics to the game. Make them emote and move around when they're interacting with you. Now, I know everyone's got their preferences. I'm not gonna say that I prefer that, but that's something to where I can imagine that they would do that by simplifying their designs, kind of like how we saw here. So it's easier to have them move around when it's necessary. And even though the character designs got updated, I don't think that really says anything for the story as a whole. Sure, this is something to modernize Steins Gate, but I don't think it's gonna be moving the story forward from 2010. I think 2010 is such an integral part of the original story that unless they're doing something extremely meta, like what I'll talk about later on in this video, they're not gonna be touching that timeline really. I mean, you lose that original charm of Akihabara, and since Steins Gate takes place in this very 2000s era, I don't know if that would really mesh well with bringing in new memes and new culture from like the 2020s. And then again, there's this whole thing about being an otaku back then where it was a little bit more stigmatized than it would have been now. When we move on to things like story elements, that's when things get a lot more exciting because we have no idea what they can be adding on. Maybe they're gonna be taking story aspects from all of the other side stories and other hundreds of hours of content that Steins Gate has on the side. Whether it be the audio dramas or the mangas that are out there, they can take inspiration from anything and integrate it into this game. Or they could go the other route and take in things from the implications that the latest installments in the science adventure franchise have been giving us. More precisely, talking about the repercussions of anonymous code. But before going too in depth about that one, let's talk about the other possibilities first. I think if they want to maintain the route of keeping the story the same but fleshing out different routes, then they can add in other things like maybe Babel of the Grieved Maze or Hide of the Dark Dimension. Two separate stories. Babel taking place with Kurisu as we see her perspective on all of these events that unfolded, and then Hide of the Dark Dimension being a completely offshoot of a story where Okabe ends up being around her in this alternate timeline. I think they both have a good way of meshing into the story, especially Hide of the Dark Dimension, because that one can just insert it as an in-between, I think like between chapters 8 and 9. It would be something that can catch people surprised, but it would still be building up on the lore that already exists for Steins Gate. And if we want to be a little bit more saucy with it, add in a little bit more pizzazz, then maybe we can add in some of the games that were only made for like pachinko machines. Steins Gate is a series that has hundreds of side content that you can just explore and immerse yourself in. So they've really got their pick in what they want to include and what they should include. Anything is available to them. But will they do it is a totally different question right there. The next possibility of what this reboot could actually be is a little bit of a confusing thing, because this could really make the Steins Gate reboot more of a meta successor sequel kind of story if we're really taking this into account as being a follow-up to Anonymous Code. Because right here, I think I have to break a little bit and go into spoilers. Because Anonymous Code has some incredibly huge implications to the entire science adventure franchise as a whole, every single title. Because one of the big revelations that is given at the end of Anonymous Code is being shown that every single timeline that we've seen, every single entry into science adventure franchise over here, whether it be Chaos Child, Chaos Head, Steins Gate, Robotics Notes, they are all splintered simulations in this worldwide simulation machine called Gaia. So everything that we've been seeing and experiencing are, again, just different kinds of simulations. And basically the simulations are the way that they explain off all of the events and weird occurrences and the powers that our characters have as being like glitches and different world layers that they belong to. It's a whole deep dive of a thing if you want to get into the specifics about what it means, but by the end of Anonymous Code, essentially everything gets reset back to zero, which means that Steins Gate can be the first entry after the new continuity is already established. We're in a world post-reboot. Maybe that's gonna cause character relationships to change. Maybe that's gonna cause settings to change. Different events happen in different ways. It can cause a ton of new different things, and that would be the explanation for why everything just feels different. And maybe they could even have a whole plot point about trying to go back into that original timeline or whatever it can be. But then again, that's up to mages on deciding whether or not they want to implement that brand new kind of idea into this new game. That's all hoping that this isn't just going to be a standard cash grab and that this is more than just a coat of paint on top of the already existing story. Because for as much as I love the original visual novel, I think there's some things that they can actually do that can really make for some really exciting changes. I mean, I'd love to see this new entry as a layup to the new Steins mystery project that they got going on that we know is in development, but know absolutely nothing about it. Other than the fact that we know that it's a spiritual successor to Steins Gate and that previous voice actors are coming back. So that means that we're gonna see cameos in one way or the other, or main character-ish. They're not gonna take the spotlight from who our main cast would be. But that's pretty much all we know. This new reboot could line things up a little bit more naturally. Maybe it could set up that little foreshadowing with maybe some teasing about what we're about to see in the future by maybe setting up new elements that we can actually control. Maybe new time travel gameplay things that we have to do that are a little bit more interactive. Maybe they could go the extra step and even go further in on connecting things with other properties in the science adventure franchise. Maybe a little bit more Easter eggs, maybe more connections to other games, maybe other things too that can make it even more satisfying to people that have loved and played and watched Steins Gate 02. This is just me spitballing at this point. I'm hoping that we see these things. We are just kind of like up in the air about what we're gonna be getting. The other thing that could happen too that would be a little bit disappointing in my opinion is that they just melded this with like linear bounded phenogram and just combined them together. I mean, that would definitely fall in under the definition of adding in new story elements, but then again, they are things that we've already seen before. So who's to say really on what we're gonna get? Overall though, I'm excited to see more Steins Gate content. Even though I'm not a big fan of the big collaborations that they do, I do wanna see more things come out. And surprisingly enough, I remember this isn't the only two projects that we're seeing come out of Steins Gate right now, because we're also waiting on that movie or TV show or whatever comes out of that Hollywood collaboration that they're doing, because that's also something that we're waiting on too, even though it might end up being a complete dumpster fire. I mean, I don't know how they're gonna be doing Steins Gate without it being an Akihabara or anything like that, but hey, that's something that we're gonna be getting in the near future as well, because they say that they're also still working on that too. But with this, I think that really ends off my brainstorming session on what I got over here. What do you guys think the new Steins Gate reboot's gonna have? Do you think it's gonna be a massive change from the original? Or do you think they're not gonna change anything at all and we're just overhyping ourselves by coming up with all of these different possibilities? Please, let me know down in the comments section below. I'd love to know what you think about Steins Gate as a whole and about this future entry. And with this, as always, I was Randy, and I'll be seeing y'all next time. Peace.